Mr. Olympia is the biggest trophy in bodybuilding. The Super Bowl, the World Cup, the ultimate goal. Right now, two Russian bodybuilders are taking over social media. Andrei Smayev, Sergey Danilov. Both weigh over 340 pounds. Videos of them have gone viral because when they stand next to Mr. Olympia champions like Chris Bumstead and Hadi Choopan, those champions look small. Chris Bumstead has won Mr. Olympia 5 times. Hadi Choopan is a former winner. But next to these Russian giants, they look like teenagers. So if size is what matters, why haven't bodybuilders this big ever won Mr. Olympia? Because when you weigh over 300 pounds of muscle, something has to give. Your conditioning suffers, your proportions fall apart, or your organs start shutting down. Judges don't just want size, they want balance, symmetry, and definition. And at that much mass, those things become nearly impossible. Some of the biggest bodybuilders in history came close. They placed second, third, fourth. They stood on stage looking more massive than the champions, but they still lost. Because in bodybuilding, bigger isn't always better. Sometimes it's just too much. These are the stories of 8 bodybuilders who were too big for Mr. Olympia. Number 1. Greg Kovacs. Greg Kovacs was the biggest bodybuilder who ever lived. Not the best, not the most successful, just the biggest. At 6'4" and 420 pounds, Greg wasn't just massive for a bodybuilder, he was massive for a human being. His arms measured 27 inches around. That's bigger than most people's legs. His chest was 70 inches wide. When he walked through a door, he had to turn sideways. But here's the problem with being that big. Your body can't handle it. Greg started competing in the early 1990s. He won some smaller shows. People were shocked by his size. Judges didn't know what to do with him. He looked like a different species compared to everyone else on stage. In 2004, Greg competed at the Arnold Classic. This is one of the biggest bodybuilding competitions in the world. He placed 13th. 13th, 420 pounds of muscle, and he couldn't even crack the top 10. Why? Because Greg was too big to get lean. When you're carrying that much mass, your body can't shed fat properly. You can't get the cuts and definition that judges want to see. You just look bloated and smooth. Greg tried everything. He dieted harder. He did more cardio. He took more drugs to burn fat. Nothing worked. His body was physically too large to achieve the conditioning required to win. But the real problem wasn't just his size on stage. It was what that size was doing to his organs. Carrying 420 pounds means your heart has to pump blood through all that tissue every second of every day for years. In November 2013, Greg Kovacs had a heart attack. Paramedics tried to save him, but his cardiovascular system had been pushed too far for too long. He died at age 44. Greg Kovacs was too big for Mr. Olympia, too big for the stage, and ultimately, too big to survive. Number 2. Nasser El-Sonbati. Nasser El-Sonbati never wanted to be a bodybuilder. Growing up in Germany, Nasser played soccer until he was 17. He actually thought bodybuilders looked ugly. After a soccer match one day, he went into a small gym next to the pitch with a friend. He planned to do some leg presses to build strength for soccer, but he met a Hungarian weightlifter there who saw his potential and convinced him to train seriously. Within 2 years, Nasser was competing, and within 10 years, he was 315 pounds of muscle. They called him the Professor because he spoke 7 languages fluently and had a university degree in history, political science, and sociology. He wore round glasses while training, which made him look more like a scholar than a mass monster. But when Nasser stepped on stage at 5'11" and over 300 pounds, there was nothing scholarly about him. He was enormous. In 1997, Nasser competed at the Mr. Olympia against Dorian Yates. Yates was going for his 6th title in a row, but his body was failing him. When the results were announced, Yates won first place. Nasser placed second. The decision was so controversial that even Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler later said Nasser deserved to win that night. Nasser believed he was robbed, and he never let anyone forget it. After retiring in 2005, Nasser gave a series of interviews where he attacked judges, competitors, and organizers. He said the sport was corrupt and fixed. He called out people by name. Former competitor Sean Ray said Nasser became bitter and angry, alienating himself from everyone in the industry. But here's the real reason Nasser never won Mr. Olympia. He was too big to get lean enough. At 315 pounds off-season, Nasser's body couldn't shed the fat needed for championship conditioning. He could show his abs even at 300 pounds, which was incredible. But to win Olympia, you need to be shredded everywhere. Your glutes, your lower back, your hamstrings. Every muscle fiber has to show. Nasser's size made that physically impossible. On March 20th, 2013, Nasser El Sonbati died in his sleep during a visit to Egypt. He was 47 years old. Years of extreme bodybuilding combined with heavy steroid use had destroyed his kidneys and heart. Nasser El Sonbati was too big for Mr. Olympia, too big to condition properly, too big for his organs to handle, and too angry to ever make peace with the sport that made him famous. Number 3. Markus Rühl. Markus Rühl wanted to be a professional soccer player. He grew up in Germany playing for his local team, hoping one day he'd go pro. But then he took a hard hit to his knee during a match. The damage was severe. His doctor told him his soccer career was over. As part of his recovery, the doctor told Markus to start lifting light weights in the gym to rebuild the muscle around his knee. At that time, Markus weighed just 120 pounds. But when Markus saw how his body changed from lifting weights, he forgot all about soccer. Within 5 years, he was competing as a bodybuilder. And within 10 years, he weighed over 300 pounds. When Markus first turned pro in 1999, he remembers walking into the Night of Champions competition in New York. He saw Paul Dillet step out of an elevator. Markus thought he was big at the time, but when he saw Paul, he said to himself, "What the hell am I doing here? This guy is twice as big as me." So Markus decided to get bigger, much bigger. By the early 2000s, Markus was eating over 8,000 calories a day just to maintain his size. He admitted in interviews that the sheer amount of food destroyed his digestion. His stomach was in constant pain, but he kept eating because that's what it took to compete. On stage, Markus weighed 285 pounds. His shoulders measured 60 inches wide. His arms were 24 inches around. When he hit a front double bicep pose, he looked like a wall of muscle. In 2002, Markus won the Night of Champions. He brought what many consider one of the freakiest physiques in bodybuilding history. Fans and critics still talk about that version of Markus today, but when it came to Mr. Olympia, Markus could never break into the top 3. His best finish was 5th place in 2004, behind Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, Gustavo Badell, and Dexter Jackson. The problem? Markus was too wide. His shoulders were so massive that they destroyed his proportions. Bodybuilding judges look for balance and symmetry. Markus had neither. His upper body was so big that his waist looked tiny in comparison. On paper, that sounds good, but on stage, it looked unbalanced. Markus also struggled to get properly conditioned. The physical toll of maintaining 300 pounds of muscle made it nearly impossible to achieve the razor-sharp detail needed to win Mr. Olympia. Markus competed against Ronnie Coleman many times over the years. He said the nice thing was standing on stage with a legend. The bad thing? Ronnie was always ahead of him. Markus retired from bodybuilding in 2010. Today, he runs his own supplement company and is active on social media. Unlike many retired bodybuilders, Markus is still healthy and alive, but he never won Mr. Olympia. Not because he wasn't big enough, because he was too big, too wide, too extreme to fit what judges were looking for. Markus Rühl was too big for Mr. Olympia. Number 4. Paul Dillet. Paul Dillet played professional football in the Canadian Football League before bodybuilding. He was big, athletic, and fast. But when he started lifting weights seriously in the late 1980s, his body exploded with muscle. Within 2 years, people were calling him Freakenstein. At 6'1" and over 290 pounds on stage, Paul was one of the biggest bodybuilders competing in the 1990s. His shoulders were massive, his back was thick, his legs looked like tree trunks. In 1994, Paul went to the Arnold Classic in Ohio. This is one of the most prestigious bodybuilding competitions in the world. Paul was the favorite to win. At 11:55 in the morning, Paul walked on stage for the first time. Everything looked fine, but 30 minutes later, when he tried to hit a front double biceps pose, his body froze. His muscles seized up. He couldn't move. Paul collapsed on stage, screaming, "Oh my God!" over and over. 4 officials had to carry him off the stage because he weighed too much for one person to lift. Paul was told to drink fluids backstage. He refused. He thought the cramps would go away. After 30 minutes, he walked back on stage. The crowd gave him a huge applause for his courage. But then it happened again. Paul's entire body locked up. He fell to the ground. This time, he couldn't get up. Paramedics rushed Paul to the hospital. When they tried to give him an IV to rehydrate him, they couldn't find a vein. His body was so dehydrated that his veins had collapsed. They tried 4 different needles before they finally got one in. Later, when Paul woke up in the hospital, doctors told him something that changed his life forever. They said, "We had to revive you. You were legally dead for 1 minute." Paul's heart had stopped beating. He was clinically dead. During that 1 minute, Paul says he had an outer body experience. He saw himself standing in a blue open space on glass. His dog was 30 feet away. He kept calling his dog, but the dog wouldn't come to him. He didn't realize he was dying. After investigations, Paul found out what caused the collapse. It was a chemical imbalance. Too much calcium and not enough magnesium in his blood. Someone had given him bad advice on how to cut water before the show. Paul said years later, "I was listening to someone I shouldn't have listened to." Paul survived, but he was never the same after that. In interviews, Paul admitted that the experience changed how he looked at bodybuilding and life. He said his perception of everything shifted after being dead for 1 minute. Paul competed for another 12 years after the Arnold Classic incident. His best result was 5th place at the 1997 Mr. Olympia. He never won the big one. Why? Because Paul was too big to safely dehydrate. At nearly 300 pounds, his body couldn't handle the extreme water cuts required to look shredded on stage. Every time he tried, he risked his life. Paul Dillet retired in 2012. Today he runs the World Beauty Fitness and Fashion Organization. He's alive and healthy, but he'll always be remembered as the bodybuilder who was too big to condition properly. The man who literally died on stage because his body was carrying more mass than it was designed to handle. Paul Dillet was too big for Mr. Olympia. Number 5. Gunter Schlierkamp. Gunter Schlierkamp grew up on a farm in Germany. He was a regular kid with no plans to become a bodybuilder. But one day, someone put a muscle magazine in his hands. When he saw photos of bodybuilders like Flex Wheeler, something clicked. He started training, and he couldn't stop. When Gunter first moved to the United States to chase his bodybuilding dream, he had no money. He slept in abandoned factories. He slept in cars. He moved around like a homeless person, just trying to survive while training. He couldn't even open a bank account because he wasn't a citizen yet, so he trusted someone to hold his money for him. That person stole everything. Gunter lost all his savings. But Gunter didn't quit. He kept training. He eventually made his way to California and started working out at Gold's Gym in Venice Beach. Suddenly, he was training alongside the same people he used to idolize in magazines. Flex Wheeler, Ronnie Coleman, Kevin Levrone. It was a dream come true. By the early 2000s, Gunter weighed over 300 pounds in the off-season. At 6'1", he was one of the thickest bodybuilders in the world. His back looked like it was carved from stone. His legs were massive. His chest was over 60 inches wide. In 2002, Gunter placed 5th at the Mr. Olympia. After the show, famous bodybuilding journalist Peter McGough came up to him backstage. McGough was excited. He told Gunter that he should have placed in the top 5 the year before. The judges had made a mistake. This year's result proved it. 3 weeks later, Gunter competed at the GNC Show of Strength in New Orleans. Ronnie Coleman was there. Ronnie had just won his 5th Mr. Olympia title. He was at the peak of his career. Nobody could beat him. But that night, Gunter Schlierkamp did. Gunter defeated Ronnie Coleman. It was shocking. Gunter became the only bodybuilder to ever beat Ronnie during his 8-year reign as Mr. Olympia champion. But 3 years later, things started falling apart. At the 2005 Mr. Olympia, Gunter placed 4th. It was his best finish ever. He was so close to the top 3. But in 2006, something went wrong. Gunter showed up to the Olympia looking off. His conditioning wasn't there. His body didn't look right. He placed 10th. After that show, Gunter retired. He was only 36 years old. In interviews, he said he saw it as a warning sign. His body was telling him that decades of extreme bodybuilding were starting to take a toll. So he walked away to focus on being a husband and father. Looking back, Gunter doesn't regret it. He's still healthy today. He's married to fitness trainer Kim Lyons. They have a son together. Gunter runs his own business and stays involved in the bodybuilding community. but he never won Mr. Olympia. Why? Because at over 300 pounds, Gunter was too big to maintain the sharpness and conditioning that judges demanded. He could get big, he could get strong, but he couldn't get shredded enough to beat smaller, more conditioned competitors like Dexter Jackson or Jay Cutler. Gunter Schlierkamp beat Ronnie Coleman once, but he was still too big for Mr. Olympia. Number 6. Lou Ferrigno. Lou Ferrigno lost 75 to 80% of his hearing when he was just 3 years old. An ear infection caused permanent nerve damage. Growing up in Brooklyn, kids bullied him constantly. They called him Deaf and Deaf Lou. Lou's father rejected him because he wasn't the perfect son. So Lou fantasized about being like the Hulk. He wanted to be strong enough to defend himself. At age 13, Lou began lifting weights. He couldn't afford to buy weights, so he made his own using a broomstick and pails filled with cement. Lou filled out his 6'5" frame fast. In 1974, Lou came second at his first Mr. Olympia. Arnold won. The next year, 1975, Lou came third. Arnold won again. But the 1975 Mr. Olympia was different. On the morning of the competition, Arnold sat down with Lou and his father for breakfast. Arnold started talking. He told Lou's father that Lou wasn't ready, that Arnold was going to win. Lou's father, who was also his coach, seemed to believe Arnold's words. He accepted his son's defeat before the show even started. Later, backstage before the show, Arnold asked Lou how he felt. Lou responded, "I'm going to lose, Arnold. You're the best." Arnold had already won in Lou's mind. Lou went on stage that night visibly shaken. He placed third. The documentary Pumping Iron captured it all. Years later, Arnold admitted Lou made a mistake by quitting. Arnold said if Lou had kept training, he would have beaten anybody in 1976 and 1970. After losing to Arnold, Lou left bodybuilding and became the Incredible Hulk on television. He became more famous for that role than for bodybuilding. In the early 1990s, Lou returned to compete at Mr. Olympia. He finished 12th and 10th. After that, he retired permanently. So why did Lou never win Mr. Olympia? Part of it was Arnold's mind games, but the real reason was simpler. Lou was too big. At 6'5" and 275 pounds, his height worked against him. When you're that tall, it's almost impossible to fill out your frame evenly. Your legs look too long. Your arms look too short in comparison. Arnold was 6'2". That was the perfect height for bodybuilding in the 1970s. Lou was 3 inches taller. Those 3 inches made all the difference. Lou Ferrigno was too big for Mr. Olympia, too tall to achieve the proportions judges wanted, and too psyched out by Arnold to ever believe he could win. Number 7. Roelly Winklaar. Roelly Winklaar was born in Curaçao. When he was 5 years old, his father died. His family moved to Rotterdam in the Netherlands to start a new life. As a teenager in 2007, Roelly was in a horrific car accident. He almost lost his eyes. Half of his arm was damaged. The accident was so bad that he couldn't work out for almost 2 years. When Roelly started training seriously, his arms exploded. They grew to 24 inches around. Roelly said he never did anything special for his arms. They just kept growing and growing. People started calling them the best arms in bodybuilding history. In 2010, Roelly shocked the bodybuilding world by winning the IFBB New York Pro in his first major competition. Out of nowhere, a new star had arrived. At 5'6" and over 240 pounds on stage, Roelly was shorter than most bodybuilders, but he was thicker and more massive than men who were 6 inches taller than him. Roelly's best moment came at the 2018 Mr. Olympia. He placed third. That year, he also won the first ever People's Champ Award. Fans voted for him. They believed he deserved to win. But here's what stopped Roelly from ever winning Mr. Olympia. His arms were too big. That sounds crazy, but in bodybuilding, judges look for balance and symmetry. Roelly's arms were so massive that they made the rest of his body look smaller in comparison. His 24-inch arms dwarfed his chest and shoulders. On stage, it threw off his proportions. In 2021, Roelly developed a severe shoulder injury. He hasn't competed since. Roelly Winklaar competed at Mr. Olympia 10 times. He never won. Not because he wasn't massive enough, because his arms were too big, too extreme, too unbalanced for judges to reward. The people's champion never became the actual champion. Number 8. Quincy Taylor. Quincy Taylor grew up in the projects in Las Vegas. He saw people shot and killed on multiple occasions. His mother raised him alone. At age 12, Quincy got mad at his mom one day and started working out with cement dumbbells he'd made himself. He never stopped. At 16, Quincy was benching 425 pounds and leg pressing 1,000 pounds. He was an All-American football player, a wrestler, and a track athlete. Coaches saw his strength and worked with him. At age 21, Quincy saw his first professional bodybuilding show. Lonnie Teeper, a famous reporter from Ironman magazine, walked up to him and said, "You're a natural. You should go for it." Quincy watched Shawn Ray pose on stage. He said, years later, "Shawn blew my mind. I had never seen someone like that before." Quincy was hooked. At 6'4", Quincy weighed 360 pounds off-season and 300 pounds on stage. At the 2007 Arnold Classic, he was billed as the biggest man in the competition. Quincy turned pro in 2001 by winning the USA Championships. He competed at Mr. Olympia twice. He never placed. He never won a major pro show. In a documentary about his life, Quincy admitted he was lucky to make $20,000 to $30,000 a year from bodybuilding. Despite being the biggest man on stage, he struggled financially. Why couldn't Quincy win Mr. Olympia? Because at 6'4" and 360 pounds, he was too big and too tall. His frame was so long that he couldn't fill it out evenly. His legs looked underdeveloped compared to his upper body. His waist looked too wide. Quincy Taylor was literally the biggest bodybuilder in the world, but he was too big for Mr. Olympia. Greg Kovacs died at 44. Nasser died at 47. Paul Dillet's heart stopped on stage. The others survived, but none of them won Mr. Olympia. Bodybuilding rewards extremes, the biggest arms, the widest back, the most shredded legs. But there's a point where extreme becomes too much. These men crossed that line. They chose size over balance, mass over symmetry, and the judges chose someone else. The question isn't whether they were big enough. They were too big. And in a sport that celebrates size, that's the cruelest irony of all.